Hi, welcome to another episode of Tutorials by Kyle Simpson from Simpson Studios, and we are doing a Cubase series. Right now I'm still doing all the basic stuff, showing you basically if you were to open Cubase the first time, you can watch these videos and they should be really helpful with helping getting you going. One thing I did not go over earlier that I felt like now I probably should have back at the very basics. We covered going over creating audio tracks and being able to create your scratch tracks and get going on that. But now what I want to show you creating MIDI tracks. Now MIDI has been around for about 35 years or so, since early 80s, if not 70s. And back in the day, MIDI used to be used just to link keyboards to other keyboards and processors to make cool new noises and sounds. But nowadays it's become a vital part of recording. I mean, almost every project you'll create will have some kind of MIDI track in, unless you're just going absolute analog or more of a raw feeling. But I can't even think of a track that I have produced in the last last few years that didn't have at least one kind of MIDI track in it. It's become a norm. It's become a must in most DAWs now. So I'm going to show you just the basics. Just like when you right click and say add audio track, or for up here, or actually a project, add track, you can go to MIDI. Again, it's simpler just to right click here, add MIDI track. Same thing as an audio track. You can name it, you can select how many counts. Of course, there's no mono or stereo for this. I mean, it's going to depend on the instrument that you assign to this. Most instruments, 99% of them, are stereo by default anyway. So we'll go ahead and say add track. So now a track has been added. Now if you add it and it's like super tiny, this is, again, it's just like the audio. A lot of it's the same. You'll see you have the same controls over here. Now, one thing that's would be the same is you have, I'm going to set this not connected. Most of the time when you come over here, it's going to be the same thing as your audio track. You got your input and you got your output. Now, an input by default is going to set to all MIDI inputs. That's normally okay. For me in my studio, I've got an 88 key MIDI controller called it's the M-Audio key station, and it's not naming correctly, but I also running the M-Audio key station 61 key, a little shorter version too, which is on my desk a little bit closer to me. The 88 key is for the clients across the room to be able to use it too. Now, what's cool is if we're both kind of going back and forth on like a piano track or trying to figure something out, it's the same thing. You can record enable, and if I hit my keyboard, see, I'm getting activity. And if I go to my other keyboard, I'll get the same activity. So it's nice to be able to collaborate back and forth on the same track. Now, if you have two piano players dueling at each other, doing different things, then that's where you'll want to assign the input to one of them being the 88 key, and then do another MIDI track and do the 61 key. That helps, keep that all split up. But 99% of the time, unless you're running 19 different MIDI products, you're just keeping it all MIDI inputs. Now, again, just like audio, now for usually audio out for an audio track would be stereo out. For this, you're telling the MIDI track to receive a signal from anything that is MIDI based that is connected. For here, you're telling it same thing, output routing. Where is this signal that I'm creating? Where is that going to attach to? Where is it going to run to? Right here is where you would do that. Now, I have already assigned an instrument. If I go to devices, VST instruments, I have already assigned a drum set. This is the Stephen Slate drums. Now we'll get into more detail on assigning and getting things like that going. But right here is where I would select that. You'll see it comes down, or there may be, if you've got contact player up or anything, any piano or synth or anything, this is where you're going to select it. So I select that. Now I'm routed. Now I'm ready to start recording. I can either make a drum loop, which actually I'm going to do that now. I got record enable on. The cool thing with MIDI is you don't have to have the monitor on too. I mean, you get the same result. It doesn't matter. And there is an option to turn that off, but for me, I like being able to just hit record enable on a keyboard or on a MIDI track and then just let her rip. So I've got the metronome on. I'm just going to record a little drum loop. All right, that's my fantastic finger drumming on the keyboard. So I have now created a MIDI track. So if you, from here, double click. Now, if you decide, if you're going to go in and you're going to manually punch notes and you don't want to say, let's say you don't have a keyboard, but you've assigned a synth, or, you know, if you're making, you know, like say you're making a whole electronic track, but you're not using a keyboard, you just want to punch it in. Up here, this is where your draw tool is going to come in, or you can right click and go, it just looks like a little pencil. Now I've got my snap tool on, or I can turn it off to where I have, you know, free roam, but I'm going to keep my snap tool on. And this is where you can draw, and then double click it and come in here. And same thing, right click, there's your draw tool. You know, I can come in here and so if you want to punch it in that way, go that direction, that's fine. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to come over here to the track that we just created. Now, there are tons of options over here. A lot of them, I'm not going to lie, you're probably not going to use half of them. there's some really incredible stuff that's in here, but as far as just if you're, you know, just standard, just doing, you know, standard engineering or producing, you know, with today's music, I mean, there is some incredible detail. You can come in here. For me, though, some of this stuff is like to create, you know, automatic, you know, you can transpose things, or you know, you can use this to transpose, or if you don't know what transposing in, that's where you're taking all the notes and shifting them up or down. For me, for transposing, you can highlight, and either you can grab with your arrow and move up and down, which you'll see then that I moved the notes, which I didn't want to do. So I'm going to undo that. If you actually just use the arrow keys on your keyboard, it does it for you. You can just move up or down and get it just right. So my next thing, okay, so I did some finger drumming here. Zooming in here, obviously, I'm pretty sloppy. I'm all over the place here. So this, as far as your controls over here, there is one main control you're going to be using. That is the quantize. If you don't know what quantize is, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you visually what it does. Now, right now, we're just set to hard quantizing, 100%. I can either click the quantize button right here. For me, though, I like to keep this closed, and I hit Q for quantize. It's easy to remember. Q for quantize. As soon as I hit Q, you'll see that all the notes that I have highlighted adjusted and snapped perfectly to the metronome. So I can do that with down here. For me, again, I like to take my time. As far as, you know, there's tools over here that'll try to do everything automatic. I like to just do it the manual way, so I know things are getting done right. And I encourage everyone to do that. Don't always cut corners and let the computer do it, because computers, as smart and as amazing as they are not perfect, and they are not logical. So that's where your brain comes in to just take things piece by piece, quantize little by little. See right here, if I were to hit quantize, see, I just lost my note. It shot over here because there was no line. There's no 16th. Right now I'm quantizing to eighth notes. So I'm going to undo that. And up here is where you can select 16th notes. And now you can see you just got a new line in. So now, if I highlight this, quantize, snapped it perfectly where it needs to be. Now, there's disadvantages to being really having high numbers on your quantizing. Let's say I go 32 notes. Now you see they're dinky. These guys right here are supposed to be right here on bar 9. If I hit quantize, See, it's snapped. Again, these go off of a 50-50 ratio. If you are 51% this way, it's going to pull it all the way over here, and I'll show you. I'm going to, actually, let me turn off the snap tool. I'm going to, looks like, yeah, I want to make it towards like 55%. Now I hit quantize. Now it's going to jump it all the way over here. So it goes on a 50-50 ratio where you are in the note. Now, that being said, if you have some whole notes here where I mean these are like supposed to be right on the one, you can move this to like go to like eighth or eighths, 1/8 on the quantize. So then it just helps keep things, it's so much easier, because then if you're that far off, it'll still snap it wherever you want it to be. If you're doing little bits of kick things like I'm doing down here, that's where you'll want to move to 16ths. Come in here, get it just right. And so now when I go through and play it, I think I quantized everything. So now we're just spot on. Now if I wanted to create a loop, this is where I will turn off the kick and the crash on this ending here. Because what we're doing, because at the beginning of the loop, we already have a kick and crash. So I'm going to cut that off, and we're going to exit out of here. I'm going to, with the snap tool on, cut off the excess. And as long as everything is quantized, it'll snap it all perfectly. So now, if I believe it's Command D or Control D for Windows, and I can loop this. And it'll loop as long as you want it to go. That's how you make a perfect drum loop. So, same goes for piano and everything else. Now, this was just the basic MIDI. I'm going to do another video of going into like velocity, expressions, sustains, and there's MIDI. There is, I mean, we're just barely just brisking the top of what MIDI is capable of doing, especially in Cubase. That's why I'm a huge fan of Cubase's MIDI engine, because it gives you everything you could ever need to get by with when you're doing MIDI-based projects, whether you are doing digital drums or piano or anything like that. There's so much more. So we're going to get into more details in the next video.